So what if I told you the reason that you feel stuck isn't because you're bad with money? What if it's not laziness or poor life choices, not inflation, but by design? Now, what if I told you prices weren't rising by accident? What if they were engineered to keep you running in place for the rest of your life? Stay with me, because if you feel like you're working harder than ever, but somehow keep falling further behind, this video is going to make you angry. So let's start with something personal. Think about your life 5, 10, even 20 years ago. Back then, the rules felt simple. You get a job, you work hard, you save, and you avoid debt, and slowly you move forward. But today, you get a raise and your rent goes up more. You pay off debt and groceries cost even more. You save money and it buys less and less every single year. You're not irresponsible, you're not lazy, you're tired. And here's the part that matters most. Almost everyone feels the same way. Now, that doesn't happen by coincidence. Let's talk about some math, because a long time ago, you could get an average job and still afford a house, raise a family, own a car, and save for retirement. That's not nostalgia, that's arithmetic. But let's rewind about 40 to 50 years. In the late 1970s, the average home price in the United States was around $47,000. The median household income was roughly $16,000 per year. That means the average home cost about 3 times the annual income. 3, not 6, not 8, not 10, 3. And that ratio mattered because when homes cost 3 times your income, you can save, you can recover from mistakes, and you can breathe. One income could support a family. College tuition could be covered with a part-time summer job. Now, healthcare wasn't a financial death sentence, and retirement wasn't a dream. It was an expectation. Now, let's look at today. The median home price is roughly $420,000, and the median household income is around $75,000. That means the average home now costs 5 to 6 times the annual income, and that's the national average. In many cities, it's 8 times the income, sometimes even 10. That single change alone rewrites your entire life, because when a house costs 6, 8, or 10 times your income, you don't own your future. You rent it. And here's the part that really hurts. If prices match today's wages the way they used to, that $420,000 house would cost closer to $220,000. Now, that's not fantasy, that's not radical, that's just restoring the old math. And the fact that this sounds so impossible to you tells us exactly how far things have shifted. And notice the solution now. Not lower prices, not higher wages, but longer mortgages. The 30 years isn't realistic anymore, so now 50 is the fix. So here's where the story gets dark. Since the 1970s, worker productivity has increased by more than 70%. We produce more, we produce faster, we produce longer, but real wages adjusted for inflation have barely moved. So let's be clear, we're producing more value than ever and keeping less and less of it. That's not inefficiency, that's redistribution. This is what it feels like. You're on a treadmill. At first it moves slowly, and then you're fine. But every year it speeds up just a little bit. Not enough to notice, but after a decade, you're sprinting just to stay in place. And that's how rising prices work. They don't crush you at once. They slowly exhaust you over the years. Now, ask yourself something uncomfortable. If the system were truly broken, wouldn't we have fixed it by now? Governments track prices obsessively, central banks model inflation numbers to the decimal, and corporations forecast consumer behavior. If millions of people are stuck and the middle class is shrinking, if savings are evaporating, who benefits? Because someone always does. Now, here's the truth that no one likes to say out loud. The modern economy cannot survive falling prices, because if prices fall, debts become harder to pay, asset values collapse, markets panic, and the government loses control. So prices have to rise, always, even if quality of life falls. And once prices rise, they almost never come back down. That's not inflation, that's ratcheting. One direction only. When prices rise faster than wages, people respond by working more, taking on debt, delaying retirement, and accepting worse deals, which makes them more dependent. They're less likely to quit, they're less likely to resist, and they're less likely to take risks. A population that's barely surviving is easier to manage. That's not conspiracy, that's just incentive. And that's why advice like just work harder, budget better, or invest smarter just feels insulting. But what if no amount of effort can overcome a system rigged to outpace you? What if the goal was never to get everyone ahead, but for everyone just to stay just productive enough to keep the machine running. Now, once you see this, you can't unsee it. And that's why housing becomes unaffordable right as people save enough, why education costs explode right as jobs start demanding degrees, why healthcare costs rise right as people age. Every milestone becomes monetized. Every step forward has a toll booth, and suddenly it feels less like bad luck and more like a pattern. But here's the shift that most people miss. A long time ago, it was hard to build an empire. You needed factories, land, and massive capital, but it was easy to survive. You could get an average job and work honest hours and still afford a life. But today, it's the opposite. Jobs are harder, security is weaker, and survival takes more effort than it should. But building something of your own has never been easier. With the technology we have right now, you don't need permission, you don't need connections, and you don't need millions of dollars. You can create value from your laptop at home. You can build skills that scale and own something that grows. You don't have to have it all figured out today. You just have to start the conversation. Go talk to ChatGPT. Ask it how to learn a skill. Ask it how to build something, how to turn what you have into something of value. Use it as a tool, a thinking partner, a way to move forward instead of staying stuck. Because the people who win in systems like this aren't the ones with perfect plans. They're the ones who start. And there's never been a better time to start than right now.